turn to the position of veterans.
Yes.
Now, the government accepts the 6 protections aren't sufficient. Where are we on your discussions with veterans associations, and when will we see the proposed government amendments to improve those protections?
Well, as soon as we have a committee stage date confirmed, then obviously the amendments are published in line with the new normal requirements a week before. We've continued to engage with veterans organisations, myself, Secretary of State for Defence, the Armed Forces Minister, and we recognise that veterans are looking for greater reassurance, and I hope very much that when the government's amendments are published, that those organisations will see that we have listened and come forward. In addition to the protections that we've already announced, and they're not inconsiderable, not having to travel to Northern Ireland to give evidence, having regard to the age and welfare of witnesses, right to seek anonymity, no cold calling, and the requirement that to avoid repeat investigations, the Commission has to be of the view that it is essential that an investigation takes place. It is for them to make that judgment. They are an independent body. Those are not inconsiderable protections that the government's already putting in place, but we will bring forward further proposals, and they will be seen when those amendments are published.
Are those discussions still ongoing with veterans associations?
Well, I've had a number of meetings myself, as has the Secretary of State Defence and the Armed Forces Minister. There continues to be correspondence as well as meetings. A lot of work has gone into that over the course of the summer and the autumn.
And Ministry of Defence, you're still liaising with them?
On a very, very close basis, yes.
The line I heard was the NIO is leading this. We're very much secondary. Would you recognise that?
Sorry, say that
the
again?
NIO is leading on this. We're secondary. Would you
I wouldn't recognise that at all. We're working really, really closely, with John Healey, on making sure that we get this right. I really would.
I recently met with Joe McVeigh, the Commissioner for Victims and Survivors.
Yes.
He lamented the fact that the debate is collapsing into a veterans versus victims binary. I think we saw that with the politicisation of the vote on the remedial order. What do you say to that, and how are we going to address that?
Well, I'm concerned about that, and I share the concerns that he has expressed, because 1,100 members of the security forces, Army, RUC, UDO and others, were killed during the Troubles. They were victims, along with all of the other victims. But for the 90% of families in Northern Ireland whose loved ones were killed by the UVF, the IRA, the INLA, the UDA, they look at our debates in Parliament and they must think, why is our experience, what happened to our loved one, not figuring? Now, it's important that their voices are heard in our debates, and I have discussed this with organisations that I have met in Northern Ireland. In all honesty, I think because of the lack of trust, there's been a terrible lack of trust, and if you like, the Legacy Act was the final straw when it came to a lack of trust. When we published the framework, and myself and Simon Harris met the Victims and Survivors Forum, I mean, there was people looked at it and said, well, that looks okay, but what's the legislation going to say? And then we published the legislation in October. And if I may just reflect on some of the comments, some people said, well, it's better than what we've got now. Well, if it wasn't better than we got now, I wouldn't have been doing my job. Some have said this is better than we expected. If you look at what the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission has had to say, it's commented really quite favourably on what we've done to fix the incompatibilities, because if we don't fix the incompatibilities, then coming back to Mr. Smith's question, then you run a greater risk of public inquiries at a cost, which has to be, all of it has to be paid for by the government. And this is, now I'm not going to say it's the last opportunity, but this is a very, very significant opportunity to create something that people can have confidence in order to enable them to find the answers that they're still looking for. That is what this is all about. And we have a shared responsibility, whatever our differences of view on some of the detail of the legislation, we have a shared responsibility to bring this through. And it is important that all of the voices representing those who lost loved ones, our forces and others, are heard in this debate and are heard in the debate in the House of Commons.
You do recognise that your amendments are critical in creating this trust. The amendments we're waiting
Well,
for.
I think in relation to veterans, I would accept that, yes, because we've done a number of things, and I've given a number of commitments from the dispatch box. But I do recognise that. But I think for the other families, victims and survivors, of course they will have views about the way in which the Commission is being reformed. But to the extent they think, yes, this is good legislation, it's a very considerable improvement, it will result in something that is ECHR compliant, I think it's very important they give voice to that so that members of Parliament on all sides hear that, because in the end we're going to have to produce something that won't necessarily give everybody everything that they want, but we have to strike a balance here. And it's finding the right balance. And we've all worked with the wonderful team that supports me on this and all the other matters we've discussed today. We've worked really hard to produce something that we think is fair, balanced, proportionate, reasonable, and has the capacity to help people to find those answers.